as the Sabbath. They weren't honoring Saturn. They weren't honoring anybody but the true God on the Sabbath by setting apart that day, but it just so happened it coincided with Saturn, so this pagan historian thought that maybe they were honoring Saturn. But in reality, they were honoring the God of heaven by that day. I'd like to read another quote. This comes from Clement of Alexandria. This is an early Church Fathers quote. Church Fathers. Clement of Alexandria. It says, He knows also the enigmas of the fasting of those days. I mean the fourth and the preparation. So the fourth day and the preparation day. It says, for the one has its name from Hermes, Mercury, and the other from Aphrodite, Venus. He fasts in his life in respect of covetousness and voluptuousness, from which all the vices grow. That's Clement of Alexandria, who lived AD 153 to 217, Miscellaneous, Book 7, Chapter 12. And that's in the Ante-Nicene Fathers, Volume 2, page 544. So here we find that Clement of Alexandria claimed that the days of the week, the Jewish days of the week, the fourth day and the preparation day, coincided with the planetary week of the pagans. It was exactly the same. So it was a continual, unbroken 7-day cycle. And this was long before Constantine made a change in 321 where he officially adopted the 7-day week over the 8-day week. Long before that, there was a 7-day week that was used very commonly among the Romans dating from before Christ was here, from 63 BC at least. If not earlier, they were keeping a 7-day weekly cycle. And there's much evidence of this. Now I'd like to read another quote, and this comes from Philo. He says, the fourth commandment has reference to the sacred seventh day, that it may be passed in a second and holy manner. Now some states keep the holy festival only once in the month, counting from the new moon, as a day sacred to the Almighty. But the nation of the Jews keeps every seventh day regularly, after each interval of 6 days. And there is an account of events recorded in the history of the creation of the world, comprising a sufficient relation of the cause of this ordinance. For the sacred historian says that the world was created in 6 days, and that the seventh day God desisted from his works and began to contemplate what he had so beautifully created. That's Philo Judaeus, the Decalogue, number 20, page 526. So notice here, it says that some states keep the holy festivals only once in the month, counting from the new moon. But he says the nation of the Jews keeps every seventh day after each interval of 6 days. So there he's showing the contrast of those who honor days according to the moon and the Jews. The Jews did not keep the Sabbath according to the moon. That's what Philo is telling us here. Now I'd like to read another quote. This comes from Philo again. It says, but after this continued and uninterrupted festival, which thus lasts through all time, there is another celebrated, namely, that of the sacred seventh day, after each recurring interval of 6 days, proclaiming a day of freedom to them also after every space of 6 days. That's Philo Judaeus, the Special Laws, number 2, 15, section 56. So just check these things out for yourself. Find out what the historians are really telling us. And Philo says that the Jews kept their week, their Sabbath, at each recurring interval, after each recurring interval of 6 days. They never had an interval of 7 or 8 days like the Lunar Sabbath argument would propose. Now I'd like to look at the laws of postponements. These are very interesting. The laws of postponements, there were laws that caused, in the Mishnah, we find these laws of postponements. And I'd like to look at one. It says, if Rosh Hashanah, which is new moon, happened to fall on Sabbath, the shofar was blown in the temple or in Jerusalem, but not in any other place in the land of Israel. And that's found in the Mishnah. And I'll just leave those references so you can look at them yourself. But that was found in the Mishnah. It says that the new moon, if it happened to fall on the Sabbath. So that shows that the new moon did not always fall on the Sabbath. It was something that could happen. It was an if. So then they would have a postponement based on that. And here's another one. Here it says, if the Day of Atonement coincides with the Sabbath, the loaves of the showbread in the temple are divided in the evening. If it coincided with the even of the Sabbath, that is Friday, the goat of the Day of Atonement is eaten in the evening. So that's also taken from the Mishnah, the fifth division under holy thing, under Menohot. So we find that the Day of Atonement could fall on any day of the week. And the Mishnah, just to let you know, the Mishnah came from 200 BC to 200 AD. That was the time period in which the Mishnah was written. And this tells us that the feast days, the annual feast days, floated through the week. They could happen any day of the week. And this was true from 200 BC to 200 AD for sure, because this is found in the Mishnah. Here's another one in the Mishnah. It says, where the Day of Atonement fell on a Friday, the showbread was then baked on a Thursday. So that's another postponement that proves that they were keeping a continual weekly cycle. Here's another. It says, where the Day of Atonement fell on a Friday, the showbread was then baked on a Thursday. I'm sorry, I just read that. And the next one, it says, when the Day of Atonement fell upon a Friday or a Sunday. So here the Day of Atonement could fall on any day of the week. And the next one, it says, the new year begins. I'm sorry, I did skip one. There's one more. It says, when the Day of Atonement fell. Oh, forgive me. I'm going to read this here. It says, the new year begins on Tishri 1, which may be the day of the Molad of Tishri, but is often delayed by 1 or 2 days for various reasons. Thus, in order to prevent the Day of Atonement, Tishri 10, from falling on a Friday or a Sunday, and the 7th day of Tabernacles, Tishri 21, from falling on a Saturday, the new year must avoid commencing on Sundays, Wednesdays, or Fridays. Now notice this. This is the current way that the Jews calculate the years, and this law that they use today, the way they reckon it today, was not used when the Mishnah was written. So this shows that the Mishnah was a very ancient document, because this law was not in use at that time. Because at that time, the Day of Atonement could fall on Friday or Sunday. But today, it will never fall on Friday or Sunday, because the way they reckon the years now, they prevent that from happening. So very anciently, the Day of Atonement could fall on any day of the week. Now I would like to point out again that, read another statement from, this is the Mishnah again. It says, if the 7th day of the willow branch coincided with the Sabbath, the willow branch rite is for 7 days. So there again we find that the willow branch, the feast, could fall on any day of the week. Another one, on festivals, all priests, irrespective of division, came up for service in the temple and shared in the showbread. If the festival starts on a Sunday, the guest priests would have to arrive in Jerusalem on the Friday before, since travel on the Sabbath is forbidden. Similarly, if the festival closes on Friday, the priests would have to stay over the Sabbath in Jerusalem. Hence, in either case, they share equally in the showbread with the priests of the division in service in that particular week. If, however, the festival started on a Monday, so that the guest priests might have arrived on Sunday, but instead came on Friday already, or if the festival closed on Thursday, so that the priests might have returned on Friday, but stayed in Jerusalem until Sunday, such delaying divisions, or guest divisions, were allotted only 2 loaves, whilst the remaining 10 loaves were divided between the incoming and outgoing weekly divisions. That's in the Mishnah. Again, we find that these annual feasts, these annual Shabbaton days, could fall any day of the week. And this proves that they did not keep a lunar Sabbath calendar. This was not part of their reckoning. This was something, the lunar Sabbath calendar idea was something that was invented much later than all of these quotes were written.